And now I'll turn it over to Katrina and Eve. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Nice to virtually meet you. I'm Eve Marie Miller from Santa Rosa Junior College. I'm the Technical Services Librarian, and Katrina Ron, my colleague, is here with me. She's one of our Electronic Resources Librarians. We're very pleased to be here today. She talked about From Chaos to Clarity, streamlining the internal Alma request process. And we have a couple of quotes here from just to get you kind of a taste of where we were and where we're going. So let me tell you about the backstory of how we got to where we are today. Less than a year ago, let me know if this all sounds familiar, we were receiving many Alma requests, upgrades, requests for changes, requests for small issues, big issues in our emails. And many of us were getting them simultaneously. Lots of us were working on what we thought were the big issues. Some of us were working on the small issues, but we weren't necessarily giving people status updates. So some people thought we were working on things. Some people thought we weren't working on things, which led to one person or two thinking that maybe they would go to different ones of us and ask if that was being done and sort of work the process a little bit to see if they could get their item up on the list before others. I know this sounds familiar to you all. So we decided that one of the things that when we all got together and talked about this, was we were not seeing the big picture, and we weren't being able to see the urgency of some issues. So we were getting concepts like some people's icebergs are one person's ice cube, let's just say. So we decided that we would come up with a better solution. And here's our solution. Sorry. We got together as a team and decided we had to figure out a better way to do it. And immediately we decided that a Kanban style triage board, which is really what we were doing, was needed. But that board had to have certain things. One of them was that everything had to be all in one place and nobody's emails anymore. It had to be accessible to everybody, not just the staff or not just those on our particular teams. It had to be easy to use. We had to be able to customize it to our own terms, Alma terms.
So if you're creating it or updating the guide, you create
a similar look and feel to something that people were used to, so that people weren't like, wait, what's happening here? What do we do? So we looked around at different triage boards and discovered that Microsoft Lists, because everybody uses Microsoft, everybody's used to it, is a great way to do it.
You're doing so if you're doing like
sorry. Then we officially formed a triage team and tested out the items that we all had sitting in our inboxes that were sort of in process, and realized that we needed to customize our form a little bit more. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. And we needed to add to the team. We realized that we were missing people and missing parts of what would really make this work. And then we rolled out the board to everybody. So we knew we were ready. We knew we had what we needed, and we could be effective in making this really a good solution for the whole libraries. And Katrina's going to tell you about the board.
Thank you, Eve. So we're just taking a look at a screenshot of the board as it is right now. We'll talk a little bit about how it works and look at a few examples. So as Eve talked about, we had different types of issues. They were big issues, small issues, upgrades, mysteries, all kinds of things. So when we were dealing with all of these different situations, we wanted to give this one place a lot of dimensions so that we could find it again, see what's going on with it, what's the status, and so on. So, and meet all of our needs. So as you can see in this screenshot, it's an auto fit view if you're familiar with Microsoft Lists. There are other views, which I will get to in a minute. We had almost 50 items in just less than a year submitted to us. And I was really even proud to say that I think a lot of colleagues in access services and tech services all submitted items that were needed, that were important, that were so everyone was participating in a really lovely way, I think. Also, just going to go to the next slide. So there are other views. Oh, I'm sorry, one more up. Okay, there we go. There we go. Yes. So this is a compact view. So if you're not familiar with Microsoft lists, it does have this ability to have customized views. And you can see there's one in the upper right tab that's called Not Completed. So brief views, views that you customize based on filters. There's a lot of flexibility there that you could have in a spreadsheet, but this met our needs so much better. It was more enjoyable to look at, I have to say as well. So we're going to go to the next slide. So how it works. So in this slide, we're breaking it down. So on the left side, we have what's added by the requester. And they were also on our board called the contact. So just who we are going to liaise with on this particular issue. And we would expect them to go back to the team they're working on and follow up with them about how the issue is going, but anyone was free to come back to the board and take a look at it as well. So the title was important, that the requester summarized it in a brief way what this issue was. What's the problem statement. Possible solution was not really required. Time frame was also helpful, but could be an estimate. And then from there, the triage team would be notified through Microsoft lists, and then they would identify a status. They would assign it to themselves if it was their area. Like each of our triage team members has sort of a specialty, so with some overlap. So if it was your area, you would definitely feel free to assign to yourself and start to work it through, work with the contact, start to build a documentation link if it was necessary, identify the issue type, status updates, and so on. Comments, I'll show you in a minute, were a place where we could really enrich what we were doing on a particular issue so that everyone was updated on it. And lastly, the automatic timestamp helped us with sorting as well. Next slide. I'm already running over time, so I'm going to be a little brief on these, but this is an issue that we had that was about a problem we were seeing that Primo was showing articles that didn't actually exist. So this was submitted by our colleague, and then we could use comments at the right-hand side to update the issue and mention the contact or the requester so that we could continue the conversation without having to necessarily set meetings too. We could just work this way and keep them updated on what's going on with this issue. There's also a documentation link in that. Next one, this is a much more extensive issue. Thank you, Eve. For this is more extensive, and we actually merged issues that we were noticing, and so they flowed into this particular issue. So we created a new item that we could start to work on what types of situations we were noticing with end of semester behaviors and how do we streamline that and make it better for everyone. So it was a much longer time frame and much more involvement with the group. Everyone contributed what they were seeing. So we can go to the next. Okay, so lessons learned, and just a few here because we are dealing with the time thing. We learned what you put into it is what you get out of it. The transparency has been worth the risks of something happening, someone accidentally deleting something. It's a shared space. You want to make sure you do backups and reindex periodically with Microsoft lists. And Eve, go ahead and share some too.
These are less technical, but I thought really important for the bigger picture. You must make them use the board. They want to go back to the email. It's easier for them to do email until they realize that it's really not. And I think that we did a really good job at sort of marketing the board too and using it in lots of different meeting spaces. And then they got like, oh, this is how we're doing this now. We've got traction by like really playing it up a little bit. So those are mine. Oh, and we had a 5-minute rule, which was when do you put in requests into the board versus just try to answer a simple email? 5 minutes. If it takes you more than 5 minutes, it's got to go on the board. That's the rule.
And we'll just go to the last slide. And so we're talking about the future briefly because we realize we are pressed for time. We want to expand the use in some ways, make sure that if something's assigned, it may not just be the triage team, which is 3 or 4 people right now. It may be someone else who it's in their work area. So they may be the person asked to triage a particular issue. And also we've talked about whether or not we would expand beyond Alma requests. That's a possibility, but we would want to think it through and see if that really fits the situation. And those were just some of the highlights. There are more. We'd happily answer questions during the Q&A. Thank you so much.
Okay, Andrea, do you want to take over? Please feel free to share your slides.
Sure. All right, so everyone can see my screen? Okay, great.
Yes.
So, hi everyone, I'm Adrienne Nguyen. I'm the Scholarly Resources and Metadata Law Librarian at the University of California, Irvine Law Library. And today I'm going to talk to you about how I talk about technical services in library school. I'm going to just outline some context, talk about the problem that I've identified, what I've done, and some additional suggestions for the future. So for context, I am a librarian in library school. I'm in my first semester, and it's been really interesting because I'm in technical services, and it's been interesting to grapple with what my classmates see as the predominant image of librarianship, which is the very traditional librarian sitting at a reference desk asking questions and answering questions. It's been disheartening a little bit to just realize how little library school students know about the back of the house aspects of librarianship. And so in one of my classes, which was about introducing folks to different jobs in the information professions in general, I did get to talk about what I do in technical services, what my colleagues do, but I also then realized that I actually had quite limited knowledge of the day-to-day realities of my colleagues as well. So this to me illustrates a very interesting problem of not just technical services in library school, but also beyond, within our own libraries, within the librarian and information profession in general. And I will say this is only a problem for people who think that technical services deserves to get a little bit more recognition. Maybe you don't think that's a problem, but I do think that it's a concern if people don't know how much work it actually takes to maintain the system and infrastructure of libraries that we have. And so it really starts with people don't really know what the system actually encompasses. And so what I've realized is my classmates don't even really know what the LMS, or I mean, for all of us here, Alma really is. They maybe interact with the circulation aspects, but they don't know what it actually takes to maintain all the back-end stuff that makes all the front-end stuff work. For the catalog, they are familiar with the catalog just because that's something they use as library users themselves, but they assume that it works perfectly and shows accurate information about what the library has at all times. There's no thinking about someone who's back there making sure that things show up and appear in the ways that one would expect. Processing is a really interesting term just because I think it's actually quite meaningless outside of the context of technical services. I do think most people know that there's a real person who puts barcodes and labels and stickers and stamps onto print books, but they don't think about how any of that works or who actually does it. Cataloging is a really interesting one because this is a job that my fellow classmates definitely know existed. There were multiple questions posted in our forum for the class that said, what kind of librarian job can I do if I don't want to interact with people ever? And the number one suggestion was become a cataloger. They don't know anything about what cataloging looks like on a day-to-day basis, but they know that catalogers don't talk to people. At least that is the conception. For electronic resources, I find this to be really interesting. There was a session earlier today that just mentioned that people don't really know how much work it actually takes to manage the vast and massive amounts of e-resources we have now. And so this is something where I think people don't think about e-resources until they run into a problem accessing something. And this is something that I think is truly an error that we could go about fixing. Collection development is my home territory, so I also can't be upset. It's another wonky term that doesn't really mean anything for most people. People know that someone out there is buying selections and buying things for the collection, but they don't tend to think about it until a book that they want is not actually available. And for acquisitions, buying stuff means there are invoices to pay, but again, who's paying them? Is someone manually reviewing invoices? We just don't know. But we do know there is someone back there who's doing all of this. So the question is, how can we ensure the work of technical services is known prior to a problem being discovered? And how can we talk about it with others, and especially library school students? So in my class, I talked about my day-to-day role in collection development. I also talked about what my colleagues in acquisitions and e-resources do. So I talked specifically about, yes, every single invoice that comes through has to be paid by someone, and someone's looking at it. Someone's also managing the budget, coordinating purchases, processing print material as needed, doing cataloging. For the e-resources work, I talked about importing records and using usage statistics and responding to a lot of "it's broken" inquiries, because that's also kind of the reality of the job in many ways too. And most of all, I emphasize, as I said before, that nothing works on the front end unless everything on the back end is actually working too. My additional suggestions for how we can ensure there's just greater awareness of technical services, not just among library school students, but also in our profession generally, starting with our own colleagues, but starting with students first, is alumni opportunities. So I say this with as much kindness and understanding as possible. All the programs that my program has hosted of alumni coming back to talk about their jobs has been all public services people. It's very understandable. People who end up in public services are the ones who like public speaking, and people who end up in tech services generally do not. But as this conference illustrates, there are plenty of us who are happy to talk about our jobs, and I really encourage folks who get alumni talking opportunities to do that, so that current library school students actually know what TS consists of today out in the field. The next one is just talking to our own colleagues. So making what you do more transparent with your own current colleagues, so that if they get asked questions about the work TS does, they say something meaningful and thoughtful about what it is that we're actually doing and the impact that TS has on the library experience. So for example, at the library that I work at, we have monthly librarian lunches where we present to each other what we do on a regular basis and talk about what we are working on. This just helps demystify everything that's happening in one department to another. Cross-departmental collaboration is another example of this. So form committees, do working groups, just collaborate across departments if possible. Also at the law library, we have something called the Collection Management Committee, which is a group of us in public services and collection services, where we talk about the, as one of my colleagues calls it, the farm to table journey that a print resource goes through. And that way everyone actually knows not just the detailed ins and outs of how any of this works, but we also maintain a broader eye on what's happening in the physical collection. The next one is just student workers. Obviously, not all student workers become librarians. Not all people in library school started out as student workers, but a possible inroad to let students know how much work it actually takes to make a print collection sustainable is really helpful. So at the law library, our student workers process our physical items, and more than one of them has commented on how they never knew the actual work required to manage the print collection like this. They spread the word to their friends. More people know that it's not magical library elves doing all the processing in the library. And lastly, what I strongly suspect is that technical services has a marketing problem. We have to learn how to better sell what we do. We can say things like, do you love looking at spreadsheets? Do you love data? Do you never want to talk to people at work aside from your colleagues? I think the primary problem is that people in public services get the very straightforward and easy, we help people. Technical services does that in a roundabout way, but we otherwise don't have a very pithy thing to say other than we fix things or we actively try to make things work. We loom in the background, which is appropriate for Halloween tomorrow, but I'm open to other suggestions on how we can better sell technical services to current library school students. So you can let me know if you have any other ideas. There is a Menti where I'm just asking for folks to just share with me what your day-to-day looks like, because I'm very curious. And if it's okay with you, I will also pass on any insights to my classmates who have additional questions about what any of these jobs look like in real life. Thank you.
Thank you. We will hold questions until all speakers finish their lightning talk. Thanks, Katrina, Eve Miller, and Adrian. Evelyn, please feel free to share your slides and proceed with your presentation.
Okay. Thank you so much, Adrian. I'm sure I really related to a lot of that. I'm sure a lot of people also did. So I'm actually Adrian's colleague at the UCI Law Library. I'm the Electronic Resources and Metadata Law Librarian, and I'm going to talk about my own version of a quick start guide to e-resource licensing. And this is just a picture of Back Bay in Newport Beach, which is an estuary nearby. I just thought it would be nice, since we're all inside today, to share that. And then at the core of this presentation, I'm just going to talk about how I used Alma specifically as the tool to document and communicate things about licenses. So in many cases, if a license is successful, librarians and users don't necessarily need to think about it too much. Generally, the license should reflect the norms and the expectations surrounding the use of the purchases that your library makes. So unless something contradicts those norms, it should be smooth sailing, but things move really quickly. And a few years, even a few months might go by, and the publishing or the research landscape could change. And the terms that you once thought were normal or expected or that everyone agreed on could look completely different. And we're totally experiencing this right now. For example, ProQuest's move away from perpetual access, that's a big change in expected use cases. And the proliferation of research that uses AI in new ways. So my thesis is that it's more important now than ever to surface our licenses and to communicate important terms to our users. But if you have maybe 50 or 100 or more licenses, this could feel like an impossible project to get in on top of. So I'm kind of suggesting using a just-in-time approach alongside Alma that would transform something like this, which is like just an excerpt from a model license, dense legal terms, into this, which just has 4 simple terms that show up in Primo in a really easy to access way. So my goal is to prioritize adding high impact license terms to Alma so that the people who would benefit from seeing those the most can see them in time. So my first step in this quick start guide is to identify the high impact license terms. And I'm not trying to find the most important license terms, because they're all important for different reasons and to different people, whether that's librarians, researchers, IT and finance staff, people outside the library, even like university council. So to get started thinking about this, I would think about who is most immediately and regularly impacted by certain terms, and then the risk associated with their work. So interlibrary loan librarians are impacted by license terms surrounding ILL all day, every day. One incident of accidentally breaking those terms is relatively low risk, but then the frequency is high, so that becomes a high impact situation. An alternative example could be compliance with accessibility standards, which I'm sure a lot of folks here are thinking about now. Someone like University Council would be concerned if the school would be liable if there are accessibility issues. And legal action is definitely a significant risk, but hopefully council is not frequently dealing with lawsuits related to accessibility compliance yet, hopefully. In any case, they're probably not looking at terms every day that relate to that. So I would start with the high frequency situations like ILL, terms related to publishing excerpts and quotations from other works, stuff related to the use of AI in research, that kind of thing. So my step 2 would be to determine your audience. So I put up this little Venn diagram on one side, people that use Alma and Primo, and then on the other side, people who are highly impacted by the license terms. So the overlap here would be the perfect place to focus your efforts in communicating the license terms to these people. Like I said, there's a lot of people outside the library who might not think to use Alma and Primo, but it is a really great potential tool for communication. So my step 3 would be to add the terms to Alma, and I didn't really make this the focus of this presentation because I think it's one of Alma's more straightforward tasks, but I'll just go over a couple options here. Alma has a thing where you can start with a master license template and then adjust specific terms as needed, and this could be useful if you have amendments to a master license agreement. You could add a new license entirely manually, which is what this is shown in this screenshot, but there are only 3 required fields, and 2 of them are just name fields. So it's not too much required of you to get started, and a lot of the terms give you drop-down options. There's also something called, what I think is called an Onyx PL file, which I've never used, but if anyone has, I'd be really interested to know about it. That is an XML formatted license that a vendor or a publisher could provide, and Alma can import that and populate the terms. And then another good feature here is that you can attach a PDF copy of a license into the license area, this attachments term, or sorry, yeah, the attachments tab. So you can reference things later there, and it can be kind of a secondary storage area. So after you add your terms and add your license, you can also attach inventory at the collection level, at the PO line level, or whatever makes sense for you. So I wanted to wrap up with a couple points about why I think everyone should care about e-resource licensing, and to bring in the theme of this conference. The system works because we do, because without licensing, our systems wouldn't work. We wouldn't have any systems or resources. So instead of keeping this work in the background, I think that it should be surfaced so that librarians and users are empowered to make the most of our resources, and then also empowered in the conversation with publishers and other vendors. Licensing gives you an opportunity to directly advocate for your library's goals, and you can get this written confirmation and explanation of how publishers will meet your needs. So I think that's really important right now. And I also wanted to highlight that licensing gives you tons of transferable skills. This is like my soapbox about licensing now. Communication, negotiation, assessing risk, identifying needs are all things you can learn, but you don't have to start with the negotiation aspect, which I think can be pretty intimidating. You can start at the documentation and the communication aspect. Getting familiar with those terms can still make a really big impact in your library. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Now, Greta, do you want to start?
Thank you, Ken. So hello everyone, I'm Greta Home, the Cataloging and Metadata Strategies Librarian at San Diego State University. Today my talk is about secondary resource type in Primo VE for external resources. So the secondary resource type feature was introduced in summer 2022. It allows a record to have more than one resource type. The secondary resource type enables users to find records through filters and search filters. For example, when searching EDDs for audios, the streaming audio will show up here underneath the thesis and dissertations when we set the secondary resource type. So I hadn't paid much attention to this feature until my CSU colleagues, Ken, Jill, and Christian, reached out to me and other SDSU folks about their project on applying secondary resource type for comics and graphic novels. And by the way, they're going to do a presentation on tomorrow at San Francisco eCAUG conference. So their work inspired me to explore whether I could configure secondary resource type for some of our local resources. And at SDSU, we have a local external collection called SDSU Electronic Thesis and Dissertations. This collection is harvested monthly via OAI-PMH from our digital repository Archipelago. All items in this collection have thesis and dissertations displayed as their resource type in Primo. However, while most titles in this collections are articles, a small subset includes audio and video materials created by students. So like the screenshot of the audio on the top left corner, this is one of the items in the SDSU EDD collection, and it is an audio. So to configure the secondary resource type for EDDs, the first step was to identify which title qualified. In other words, how to set norm rules to filter out the audio and video works from the rest of the EDDs. In Archipelago, these EDDs don't have audio or video in their type field. The type value can only be thesis or dissertations. And we can now just set them apart from the rest of the article using the type value. I found there are two ways for the titles for our resources in this collection. Two conditions that we can distinguish audio and videos. First, the audio or video will appear in the title. And second, the extent field does not contain the word page. So the second condition is needed as there are some EDD are about videos or audios, but that is actually an article like this at this title show. So I use these two conditions to identify relevant records and follow express instructions to configure secondary resource types in the discovery configuration menu. Since the EDD external collection maps from MOS to DC, I added the necessary mapping here and added the norm rules for the mapping. However, the secondary resource type didn't work if we followed directly by the express instruction. Instead of displaying thesis and dissertations as the primary type in Primo, and audio or video as the secondary resource type, Primo replaced the primary type resource type entirely. So all items that meet the two conditions were reclassified simply as audio or video. And there's no way that I can set thesis and dissertation as the primary resource type in Primo. So it seems that the reason of the failure is that when there are two DC types appeared for one title, and the values, dissertation audio or dissertation and video, are both acceptable Primo resource type values. So when this happened, Primo gets confused which one shall it set as the primary resource type. So I created two dummy values, EDD audios and EDD videos. In the DC2 discovery type mapping settings, they're all set to be dissertations. So Primo will know that if one title has two values for DC types, for example, EDD audio and dissertation, these two values are treated as dissertations. It does not need Primo to decide which one is the primary resource type since they're all the same dissertations. And in the norm rules, we changed the mapping as well. We created two dummy values ETD audios and ETD video. And in the secondary resource type configuration, I use these two dummy values as conditions for assigning the secondary resource type. This is a bit of a workaround, but it allowed us to achieve our goal so that currently the ETDs for audio and video can be successfully shown as secondary resource type in Primo. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you to all of our presenters. Thanks, Greta, to finish this lightning talk. Now, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. Or you can always put it in the chat too. It just slows us down a little bit. This is a lot to digest, but all the slides will also be shared with you afterwards. So I have a question for Adrian, talking about technical services. We do have public services. People ask, what do technical services do, or particularly what does collection management services do? And to be honest, some people can take pretty offensive about that. I know you mentioned about being more articulate, be an advocate of our own work. But for people who struggle with communicating technical aspect of the work, what do you recommend?
So one of the things that I think was really helpful was creating an informal setting, just so it's a little bit more relaxed so that you don't feel as pressured to get every single technical aspect out. I mean, I think it's okay to say this. I don't think public services cares about the technical aspects of our work. And that's okay. But I think even just sitting down and going through with them one aspect, like something that really takes up a big part of your day to day, is helpful. So I think one of the things that I had done when I was presenting one aspect of my job is I had printed out an example of a Gobi slip that I reviewed, and I gave it to everyone to just see. Here are the things that I look at. These are the things that I'm thinking about in making a selection for the collection. And that was just really helpful, even if it was just one thing that I was showing them. I think it was I did not need to get into, I have to think about like tier 1, tier 2 things, but then they use these and stuff. No one cares about that. That's okay. But just showing them the more baseline stuff of what I did, I think went a long way, and just showing people what I do in my office all day.
Yeah, so translate it into language they can understand and communicate often in small pieces instead of trying to explain everything. Thank you.
Yeah.
So a question for Katrina and Eve. In the Microsoft list, I haven't used it. Is it part of the Microsoft 365 package?
I believe it is. So yeah. So a lot of people who work in the Microsoft suite will have access to it.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Katie.
I'm also in library school, Adrian, and but I'm graduating next spring, or in the spring. So I was surprised. I took collection management over the summer, and I was like, oh, this is where all the technical services stuff is. And I recognize like jobs that I've done as a volunteer for a long time in different libraries. But I was also thinking about in archives, I feel like metadata and the creating finding aids and all of those things are discussed a lot more, but I wonder if it's because so many more people have to do it within the archiving, right? I don't know. It's kind of interesting to think of the same like metadata creation and archive versus all the technical services and libraries and how those, I mean, yeah, it's similar, but it is discussed. It feels like it's discussed more in archives. Anyway, that was just a comment I wanted to make on your presentation, but I did enjoy it. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie, and congratulations on almost graduating. I cannot wait to get to that point. The first semester has been rough. But yes, I will say, so I'm at San Jose State, and a lot of my colleagues have gone through the program, and I think their primary comment has just been that it has been surprising to just see that there's not as much of the technical components as one would hope, just given the fact that, I mean, I don't really know what the numbers are like in the profession, but it feels like half of the jobs are public services ish and half of the jobs are technical services oriented. So it's surprising that it's concentrated in just a few classes and there are not as many offered as one would hope. Because I'm honestly struggling with that too and planning out my own degree program.
I have a question for Greta. So how many of your IZ record has secondary, I mean, how many types of secondary resource type have you set up in your institution at IZ level?
So at IZ level, we set up two sort of collections for secondary resource type. One is ETD, the other ETD is purely like Primo harvested data that do not store like a local record in Alma. And the other collection is IZ only comics. So for the IZ only comics, I think we only did a trial for 5 to 10 items. And for EDDs, I think we have about 8,000 records, but only a small set of them that are audio or videos. I think less than 20.
Thanks. Well, if there isn't any more questions, thank you all for attending this lightning talk. And I hope you enjoyed today's conference and will enjoy tomorrow's conference too. And thanks for the tips. We are basically doing this conference, learning on the job kind of experience. So I really appreciate you give us feedback and tips. Okay, have a good evening, everyone.